for the first time in my life, I had like anxiety, you know, worry, you know, stress, like, am I gonna be good enough? You know, did I give up this thing I've been pursuing for 20 years to go be a failure at this other thing? And those weights wear on you. And it's hard, man. It's getting out is the hardest thing I've ever done.
I'm almost kind of embarrassed to like show my dry ass feet.
I got mine tucked down here. Move this a little bit. I did the same thing too. Like, we were rehearsing right now. It's like, no, we're live. We're like, oh shit.
Well, Mike, the last time you were on the Modern Day Sniper podcast was a long time ago.
Was it with me?
That? It was with you. Yeah.
Like, right when we started, it was like, well, we kicked off our podcast. This it was SHOT Show of 2024. We released our first episode and podcast in January of 2020.
Okay.
It's right. I remember I wanted to do like because we were talking a lot about. I mean, I think your and I's conversations was always about between what's going on in our
mental performance. Yeah.
So I think it was along those lines.
Still working on it.
Yeah, right. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, still working on it.
Yeah. Oh man, it's really good to have you out here, Mike.
I appreciate it. It's fun to be here.
It's weird to like, you know, you were in Washington for how many years were you in Washington?
So I got to Washington in 2007 and then left in 2010, I want to say. We went to Korea for 3 years.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then from the, you know, I got to the unit I was in then and got back in like 2015, and I had just left this summer, July of 2023.
Right. So, okay. So you went to Korea. Reacquaint me with your career path.
So I was in college. 9/11 happened. Felt compelled to answer the call. Came in as a helicopter mechanic, Black Hawk crew chief. Ended up at the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, where I did a lot of my crew chief time. Was deployed a lot, sat behind the minigun, doing that kind of work. Some of the most fun I've had in my life, honestly, looking back, great memories. Ended up leaving the regiment to become a pilot in late 2007.
That's right.
And then became a pilot. Came up to Washington. It was my first duty assignment as a young pilot, kind of cutting my teeth. Left from there, went to Korea for 3 years, and then ended up assessing back again as a pilot this time in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. And I'd been there since, up until my retirement, you know, as a flight lead in July.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I remember the first time you came out. When I first met you, you came out to a rifle class. What year was that?
That would have been 2008, I want to say. It was because I signed up, you were still running your own company, Central Cascade Precision, and then you were transitioning over to Magpul. So it was kind of a long wait to get to the class. Yeah. But then, yeah, it was that year.
Yeah, that was so long ago. Seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, I don't think we had all this great stuff.
I was completely baby-faced, clean-shaven. Yeah, wild. Yeah, man.
I was still in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, you were. Yeah. And you came in when?
07.
07, okay.
Just say it. I'm a boot. I get it. All right.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, everybody's boot to somebody, right?
That's right.
Everybody's boot to somebody. So, and now you're out here with us in Florida at Altus Shooting Solutions.
Yeah, it's awesome. You know, we've been talking for a while, and this season's kicking off for me. You know, competition season for PRS and NRL Hunter, and it just seemed like a really great opportunity to hang out with my friends again, and also to get a new baseline for performance established, clean up some things, you know, kind of sharpen that blade again prior to the season starting. So it just all came together for us, and I'm grateful it did.
Absolutely.
You know what's cool, and this is why I appreciate you, Mike, is I was just reading an Instagram post because that's where I get all my inspiration from lately. But it said real friends pay full price for your product and leave a review.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I appreciate you coming out,
Absolutely.
taking our class, the full price of it. And
Yeah.
You've always done that.
Yeah.
You've always done that.
I don't believe in, like, if you have a friend who's a small business owner, right? That is one of the hardest things you can do, is to be a small business owner. Like, I don't even have a full appreciation for it because, well, I guess I am a small business owner with Long Range with the Lillys, but not on the level of, you know, what you guys are doing, like you're feeding your families and everything else. And I get really frustrated when everybody wants, hey man, hook me up. Hey man, give me this at a discount. Hey man, you know, and if you did that for everybody, you wouldn't be in business.
Yep.
If your friend cared about you and cared about your success, they would want to support you.
Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, I think I would feel a little different if you were in charge of a large corporation and, you know, whatever, maybe it's a little different, but as a small business owner, every dollar counts.
Absolutely. Man.
So,
It's the guy who cuts the chambers in my barrels, Tom Ryder.
Yeah.
You know, it's SPR Industries over in Seattle. Same thing. I mean, I pay for my chamber jobs. You know, I mean, there's a couple of chambers that like sometimes Proof will send me some, you know, a couple of pre-fits here and there, but largely my chamber jobs are done and I pay for them because like that's a small business for him and he's trying to figure out how to make it.
yeah.
And I believe in his product. I believe in his skills, and I want to support that. And it's important. And you don't really appreciate it until you're actually the dude that is like, you're looking at those books and you're going, okay, man, well, a little slim this month, right? We gotta do something. So, yeah, man, it's yeah, absolutely. I'm super grateful to have you here.
No, I'm happy to be here to receive the instruction. You know, I value both of your opinions. You're both experts and masters in your craft, and you know, it's so hard in this game to self-diagnose and to self-correct and fix things that you may not even know you're doing. You know, I always go back to golf with a lot of these analogies, but you know, the greatest golfers in the world still have a coach who is 99.9% not as good of a golfer as they are.
You know who said that to me, man? Yeah, I just like I don't want to interrupt your train of thought.
Yeah.
David Cantu said that to me.
Yeah.
I was having some internal struggles, right? And I was not happy with my performance, and you know, that whole imposter syndrome thing going on. And David's just like, he goes, you think Tiger Woods' coach can play a better game of golf than Tiger Woods? And I was like, okay, man, you got a point.
But having a trained eye who knows what he's talking about from an outside perspective that can show, especially with all the modern, you know, teaching aids that you guys have, like the trigger cam and video and everything else, like that kind of experience is invaluable. Like today.
Well, we had a trigger cam. We had a trigger cam until a mishap.
Until somebody got a hold of it.
That's all right. They're pieces of shit anyways.
It
Not the
wasn't
trigger
trick
cam. Not the trigger
Yeah,
cam.
the monitor.
The monitor. Yeah.
Yeah. So Phil happened.
Actually, the wind happened.
The win. Yeah, but it was Phil's responsibility at the time. He was signed for it. But no, what I was saying is like, it's invaluable to have that. And if you are not getting that azimuth check occasionally as a competitor, you're really hamstringing yourself in your growth.
100% agree with that. I mean, this year, I have been, you know, I was telling the class this morning, I've never really truly focused on being a competitor. That's just something that I've never tried to do. And I've done a tremendous amount. Well, I'm saying that it's a tremendous amount, but I've been really focused on doing a lot of self-work, right? Self-evaluation. I made a post about it today, self-evaluation or self-exam, right?
Yep.
And that's been a big process for me over the last few years. The last few years has been really, really tough. Family issues, and just, you know, you kind of feel like your life is falling apart, and you know, your focus is so narrowed, right, on dealing with these problems that seem like mountains, right? But in the grand scheme of things, it's just another small chapter in your life. But at that point in time when you're dealing with them, they actually seem like it's Mount Everest. You know?
Yeah, I had a mentor, you know, getting out of the military recently was a struggle that I thought that I was far better prepared for than I was. And what my mentor told to me, he had this quote, and I thought it was a fantastic quote. It's really hard to swim for shore if you're just trying not to drown by treading water.
Yeah, man.
So I think, you know, when you're stuck in these moments, it's super hard to like see a way out and go because you're just overwhelmed and the water's coming in your mouth. You're trying not to drown. So
Absolutely.
I can relate for sure.
Absolutely, man. That's a really, really good, impactful quote. And I'm going to keep that one for sure. It's good.
You guys like looked at me like I was just getting deep with you guys, you know, like I'm like trying to think. I was like, I mean, I can't even swim, so.
Well, we know you can swim. You floated the river with us.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, Phil came out and floated the yak with us.
Nice.
What was that? That was a long time. It was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It certainly was. That's become a very important pastime for us in the summer months. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun to float the river. If you ever decide to come back to Washington, you need us up and we'll go float the river.
Yeah, I'll definitely come back out. I miss Washington. I miss aspects of Washington. I'd like to caveat that phrase.
Yeah, for sure.
It's still one of the most beautiful states I've ever been in.
I absolutely agree with that.
It's just, it was time to go.
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, it's, I don't think we're going to stick around there for, you know, it's definitely not our forever place. You know, we have plans, we have goals, we have things that we want to do. And I think as much as I do like, you know, I'm like, you know, I don't want to leave the coast. I don't want to leave the opportunity to go to the coast and experience Puget Sound and the San Juan Islands. And I love going crab fishing. I love going salmon fishing, all that stuff. But then I'm like, when was the last time I actually did that? It's been a while, right? You grow up, life happens, other things. It's the ideal of having that in your backyard, right, at your doorstep. It's closer for you than it is for me, right? I'm out in the desert now, but I think you know, our goal is to end up someplace in Montana or in that kind of southwest Montana area. But I love the mountains. I could never be away from the mountains. Period. End of story.
I've traded legit mountains for hills that people call mountains.
Right.
So they're still pretty to look at, but
for sure, it's just a different it's a different deal. I mean, I go back to the East Coast, like growing up on the East Coast. Go back and visit. It's actually been a really long time. I went back in December and visited my hometown. It had been like 8 years since I'd been back there. And we went in the wintertime, so it's pretty dreary and kind of, you know, gloomy in the wintertime there. It's brutally cold, Buffalo, Niagara Falls area. And even going back and seeing it there, it's beautiful in its own right. You know, it's definitely pretty, and I definitely miss the memories of like growing up there, deer hunting and fishing and all that stuff. So, you know, it's nice to visit. I don't think I could live there though.
Again, you guys just like in sync. Look at me, like.
Yeah, where are you at?
I'm just enjoying the view.
Well, you and I have had some pretty good conversations about something that you mentioned earlier that was kind of the genesis of this, right?
Sure.
Of this discussion. And I think it's profoundly impactful. And I think it's something that younger dudes don't necessarily appreciate right off the get-go or right out of the gate. And I think sometimes, like, as you get a little bit longer in the tooth, so to speak, it becomes more impactful. You know, and that's the departure from a career, right? And how long your career was you
21 years?
21 years. Yeah. I mean, shit, I'm the boot here. You both of you guys have more time in service than I do. My career was cut pretty short in the grand scheme of things. So
yeah,
the departure is, but I mean, like the time span, I don't think has much to do with it. It has to do with the amount of passion and the amount of effort and energy that you sink into it, right? In terms of the dedication that you give. And then it's not there anymore.
I would agree with that, and I think it's, everybody has their own journey and their own reasons why they signed up and chose to do what they did. I mean, the three of us here all did service, and we all left in a very different way. Like, you did a shorter stint in service, came and went on your own kind of decisions. You were the master of your destiny. You came in and that was taken from you, essentially. You were injured, told you can't do this anymore. And I did the whole career, the standard retirement, everything else. And for me, it was really a family decision.
Yeah.
I have probably like the most supportive wife anybody could ever ask. And, she is like involved in the FRG, did all the events. Like, she was a stalwart of a wife. And, I came home from a deployment. It was a rougher deployment, and she sat me down. Both our boys left the house at this point, and she's like, hey, you're gone all the time. I'm home by myself. Like, you always said after 20 I would get a vote. Like, I really want to talk about this. And we had a long talk about it. And I hadn't even really thought about getting out, if we're being honest. Like, don't get me wrong, like we all did, man, I'm tired. I'm wore out. Like, this sucks. Like, I hate it. At least I would verbalize that. And then I would go do the deed and do the job that I love doing, and I would get kind of like replenished. But Keely wasn't getting that anymore, right? So we had a discussion and did kind of a feasibility study on, what my option looked like getting out, and we chose to get out. And that came as a shock to a lot of people in the organization, because I was having a pretty stellar career, and that I was earmarked for some of the positions, moving up. I was at the very, very top of the game as a flight lead in the 160th. It doesn't get any better than that for a warrant officer. But even with all that being said, I had, a super strong support network from my family. I had a community that I was deeply involved in the shooting community, full of good people, some of our, best friends. Some of the most treasured relationships we have are in this community, in addition to, our military community. But even that, like, I was shocked at how hard that transition was in ways that I never expected. And you hear, like, talk about it. People are like, hey man, it's really hard. But that's about all you get from people.
Right.
They don't explain it to you. And so, you and I had this conversation. There's a lot of, relatively speaking now versus 10, 15 years ago, there's a lot of good conversations about veteran awareness, depression, stuff like that. And you hear a lot about PTSD and the statistic that, 22 veterans a day die from suicide. And I guess I always associated, like, super traumatic, horrible things that lead to PTSD, that lead to suicide. And I was kind of resentful of this image that veterans are, like, just fragile, we're just ticking time bombs waiting to go off and fall to pieces. And I felt like I was never going to be that way. So it frustrated me. And now that I've gone through this process, not that I ever thought about suicide or anything like that, but, like, there was some depression in there, like some legit depression that I didn't even realize I was going through. And I had access to many, many, many more resources than a lot of people I've known, or, the Army's doing a better job, and the DoD as a whole, on educating soldiers and making sure that when they get out, they have, resources and tools. And I say soldiers, Marines, airmen, whatever. Service members. Even with all of that, I felt horribly unprepared. Like, in my unit, I had access to a shrink that I could call anytime I want just to talk about things. I had a really good exit program that they've recently stood up called the exfil program. And it's solely dedicated around, like, setting dudes up for success when they get out. But again, I don't think I was prepared, like, for that loss of identity, loss of, like, self-worth. You know what I mean?
Oh, I do.
Like, I don't know, what was it like for you when you got out?
I want to say for me, when I got out in 18, I honestly, there was no time to think, right? I think because of how I got out and how I immediately just rolled right into working for Gunworks and adopting myself into the community of, the precision rifle community that you just talked about. And honestly, I was by myself, right? And I was able to, like, I guess, focus on the things that I wasn't able to do while I was in the service. But at that same time, a lot of my regret was actually more family related than it was like Marine Corps related, I guess, if that makes sense, right? A lot of my regrets was things like not having enough time with Zoe and stuff like that. I didn't get her until a year later after I got out. But I think even still to this day, in the back of my head, I still struggle with, like, what if I would have stayed? Like, what does that journey look like? Right. Granted, I'm happy to be where I'm at now, but I think Claire sees it in me sometimes when I'm just like, what the hell? Right. And like, it's hard, right? It's hard to get have that structure for 11 years, right? For me, at least for 11 years of life. And then being able to removing myself from that. And then now trying to figure the fuck out. Right. Even though I have tapped into all these resources, right? Utilizing the VA, benefits, GI Bill, stuff like that, right? Sure, I have access to those, but it's still not even enough to fill the hole, right? That it was left after my separation.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, because everybody does have their own reasons. And so, like, family reasons, it's like, hey, it's that time.
It's time.
Yeah, it's that time, because none of that's going to last forever.
No.
Right? None of it's going to last forever. And that door is eventually it's not even a door, it's a chapter in life, right? It's a chapter in life that's eventually you're going to turn that page and go to a new chapter. And I think it's important to go back and talk about what the point of you, like, why you chose that path in life to begin with, right? Because everybody has their own individual story of why they chose that path. And I think that, like, I look at things now, and having seen having had the experiences that I've had, war is not a pretty thing.
No.
It's not a pretty thing. It's not glorious. It's not, like, you know what I mean? Like, and you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's not glorious at all. And it's like, you're going to die in a stinking ass ditch. You know what I mean? Like, we see now everything's televised. You can see people, there was a video that came across Instagram that was horribly heartbreaking to watch. I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. You know the one I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the Green Berets in Mali?
Well, that
was a horrible one. Yeah.
That was horrible to watch, but I don't even know if it was a Russian or Ukrainian, right? It doesn't even freaking matter.
Yes,
right?
I do know. That's terrible. Yeah.
Absolutely horrible, man. And, like, guess what, homie? That's your reality. Like, that is your reality. And so you look at it from the standpoint of going, okay, well, like, you answered the call. How old were you when that happened?
So I was a little older. I was already, I was 21 when I went in.
Yeah.
So I didn't do the straight out 18 thing. I definitely went to college, had a good time, kind of lost my way. And then I needed some discipline, and luckily the military was there to provide it and kind of straighten out my life. But I feel, looking back on it now, that was the best decision I ever made, was to join the military. So
I guess I look at it from the point of view, like, you know, everybody has their own individual reasons, but I guess in the grand scheme of things, right, everybody is, you're looking for something. You're looking to be a part of something. You're looking for camaraderie. You're looking for brotherhood. You're looking for adventure. You're looking for challenge. And there is, you know, everybody that comes into these organizations is largely coming for the same reasons in one way, form, or another. And you find that together, and that's the bond that brings you together, because everybody is there for very, very similar purposes and reasons. And that is, I think, that's where the hard part about separating from that occurs, because you're venturing into the unknown. You're venturing into something that is scary because it's change. And you looked at it and you probably said, and you were like, well, I kind of know that this is coming. I kind of know that I see the writing on the wall at some point in time. Maybe the same thing for you. I didn't, right? Like you said, that was taken. And that was like, my dreams were taken away from me. And that was fucking hard. Like, that was super hard. Like, I didn't pick up a rifle for like 3 years, two and a half, 3 years, because it was just like fucking painful. Like, all of my mates were going to schools and continuing on the progression that I wanted to so badly go chase after, from that call of adventure and that continuation of wanting to be a part of something and wanting to be, you know, with my boys and my friends, going to do cool shit, right?
Yep.
We want to go do cool, rad shit.
Yep.
Dangerous stuff. But at that point, it doesn't really matter how dangerous it is. You're there for one another. And it's selfish. It's at some degree, right? It's selfish to some degree because you're chasing after the things that you want. And then when that gets taken from you, oof, that's not easy. And I think what I did was I repressed a lot of that. I put that shit away, locked it, pitched the key, and was like, nah, we're not dealing with that right now. I'm going to go, and I had this grand plan in my life. I was like, well, I'm going to accept this, and the only way for me to get through this is to accept it, that this is now my new reality, right? When you get told you can't do it anymore, I was like, well, the prognosis was really shitty. I didn't know if I would be able to ever walk without a cane or crutches again. And when that med board dropped and they were just like, yeah, you're unfit for service, I had the option to appeal it, right? But most people at that point in time, in those 2004, 2005 time frame,
Right.
nobody really knew what to do with us, right?
No.
This was such a new experience for the Department of Defense to deal with casualties and, you know, wounded warfighters on such a mass scale that it was just like disability severance, disability severance. You know what I mean? Like, now you see dudes that are wearing uniforms that they don't have an arm, they don't have a leg,
Yep.
you know,
Serving in a high capacity.
serving in a very high capacity.
Yeah.
And so maybe that was my mental, my lack of mental toughness, you know, I don't know. But I basically said, if I can't do my job, I don't want to be here.
And I think that's fair. Like,
Right?
I think you got to show yourself some grace on that.
For sure. No, I'm not trying to say that, like, I have regrets. No, I don't. Because a lot of people ask me, like, 3-4 years after I got hurt and I was able to recover enough, I was rucking in the mountains and going on backcountry hunting trips, and I ended up getting to be in better shape than, you know, that I was in the Marine Corps, because I had a new drive. I loved the mountains. I loved hunting, and I loved to experience that, because going into the backcountry was just like planning a reconnaissance mission. It's exactly the same thing, right? So you have to plan. It's SMEAC, like it's SMEAC 5-paragraph order, right? So I found connectedness in that, which then kept that stuff still locked up. You know what I mean? And but it doesn't last. It's coming out.
Yeah. you can't, and you may think you had it locked up, but you didn't have it locked. Like,
No, yeah,
stuff's
I was
coming
kidding
out.
myself.
Yeah, we just didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, sorry, I got distracted there. Yeah, it's coming out. You don't realize it's coming out.
Right.
Usually, it's the people close to you that have to point out, like, that you're letting some stuff out.
There's some behaviors that are happening.
Right.
There's patterns that I'm witnessing. Yeah, for sure.
I think, you know, when we talk about these feelings when you're getting out, it's every one of us sitting on this couch here. When we woke up in the morning, we knew who we were, what we were doing, and we were good at it, and then we were respected in our communities for it. And I don't think that there's enough weight assigned to that. Like, I don't think we realize how much that means, because as I was getting out, the possibility of, like, I have to find a job. I don't know if I'm going to be good at this job. I don't know really much about this. I knew I didn't want to fly anymore. I didn't want to go do the airlines thing because that just seems like the most boring gig on the planet for me. You know, I was able to do the coolest flying you could ever do. And people ask me about that, like, you didn't want to go to the airlines. And I said, well, I feel like it would kind of be like Lewis Hamilton getting out and driving an Uber. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not gonna hold a candle to what I was doing. So I don't want to do anything that's even close to that, because it's just gonna make me miss what this was. So I went in a completely different direction. And for the first time in my life, I had, like, anxiety, you know, worry, you know, stress. Like, am I going to be good enough? You know, did I give up this thing I've been pursuing for 20 years to go be a failure at this other thing? And those weights wear on you. And it's hard, man. It's getting out is the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than making it to the 160th, harder than flying combat missions and doing brownout landings at night and, like, all that crazy stuff. Like, getting out and remaking myself as a civilian has been the hardest thing I've ever done.
Sure. It's
Hands
unknown. Yeah, it's unknown territory, and you're stepping off that precipice, and behind you was all of the familiarity and the safety and security, and now you're stepping off into the unknown. Yeah, it's terrifying. It really is. I mean, I was in a situation where I was like, okay, well, I'm going to accept this, right? The only way for me to get through this is just to say, all right, well, that part of my life is over. We're going to just go ahead and lock that up, and I'm going to focus on this new thing. And that was working for a family business in Yakima. And it was so bizarre because I remember I was sitting on the couch recovering, probably super high on pain meds, and the only thing I could do was just, like, watch TV, and it sucked. It was the worst thing ever. So I was watching these shows, and it was the time when Monster Garage was a thing, right? Jesse James was doing Monster Garage and Orange County Choppers and, like, a lot of these fabrication shows, and I was watching this stuff, and I was like, man, that's cool. Like, look what those dudes did with that thing in, like, what, a day, 2 days? That's pretty rad. And my mother was visiting Camp Pendleton, basically to help support in my recovery process. And her boyfriend was there, and he was, you know, watching the show with me, and we started talking. And it's kind of foggy because, like I said, I was on pain meds for, like, almost like 8-9 months.
Yeah.
So it's, like, kind of foggy and spotty. But I remember just saying, that's really cool. And he goes, well, we kind of do something similar to that in the shop that I work at, or what we do. And I was like, really? What do you, like, I didn't have any clue really what they had done, because that was a family business that my mother had helped him, you know, grow. And it was a liquid nitrogen transportation company. And so part of the agriculture industry in Washington was using controlled atmosphere fruit storage. And what he was doing was he was fabricating these custom-built trailers that had liquid nitrogen tanks that we would run the liquid through a vaporizer and pump it into a room to reduce the O2 level that would basically put the fruit to sleep. And it could stay in that state for up to 2 years. And that market that technology helped even out the disparity of the South American fruit market, right? So the American fruit market could stay competitive with the reverse growing seasons of South America. So it was really interesting. And he was like, I'll teach you how to weld. I was like, welding looks really cool. I want to build stuff, like that looks rad. And so they offered me a job. And at that point in time, there was really nothing else to do. Like, I didn't know if I could walk again. Contracting, right?
Right.
Just started to bud.
Yep.
And not too many people knew how to get into it. Definitely not like it was during the heyday of 2008, 2009,
right.
To what it is today. And so I didn't know what to do either. I was terrified. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. This has been my entire existence, right? And so I came up to Washington and said, sure, I'll take that job. And it didn't end up working out. And it was just, there's a lot of issues, obviously, like working with family businesses and stuff. There's a lot of dynamics that definitely are not for everybody. But it just ended up hitting me one day. This is not me. This is not who I am. Like, this is not a part of who I am. And I had this existential crisis. Kind of like you said, I started to have anxiety. I started to get really stressed out. Like, this can't be my existence. I feel like I'm pigeonholed in here. I don't really understand what I could possibly do. I got my pilot's license.
Yep.
But I had no desire, much like you, I had no desire to go fly for a commercial airline. I wasn't going to be a taxi driver. You know what I mean? Like, it just didn't seem like it was fun, I love flying airplanes, but just didn't seem like that. But then I was like, well, I'm either going to go be a cop, which I am super grateful that I didn't do that. No offense to all the cops out there. We love you guys. We love everything that you do. But your job also comes with some very, very significant pitfalls, right? And it's no secret that being a cop nowadays is a really, really tough job.
It's harder than it's ever been.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine. Like, regardless that, and I said, or I can get back into the shooting world. And that was when I picked a rifle back up and started to kind of teach on my own a little bit, and went to shoot some more competitions, and I was like, okay, well, this is actually a big thing. This is a thing now. And so somehow I managed to carve myself a niche, and here I am, right? And so I often ask myself, though, am I truly doing what I am supposed to do, right? As a person, like, is this truly my identity as what I am and what I'm doing? I'm 44 years old, right? So it's definitely my passion. And it's like Phil, you always say, right? Your passion is teaching, and you just so happen to teach your hobby, right?
Yeah.
And so that's pretty much what we do. It's pretty much what we do.
Well, if I wasn't teaching people how to shoot a rifle, I'd be teaching in the school system.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I always knew that I wanted to be in the education system.
Sure.
Like, even after I'm tired of teaching people how to skid square behind the rifle, how to keep your face on the gun, eventually I'll end up in some small town teaching high school algebra.
Sure. Yeah. Algebra teacher.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah. There's so many jokes there. I'm just not going there. Not even going to go there.
One of the things, though, that struck me, I was listening to a podcast, and I'm sorry, no disrespect here, but I can't remember the name of this individual, but it was a Delta operator on a podcast, and he was talking about his struggles in getting out of that, and he basically said, everybody says you have to reassimilate into society. Right? You got to reassimilate into society. Like, this is a world over here that very few people know and very few people experience. It's a very small percentage of people. And he said, well, I don't even know if I ever assimilated into society.
If you're ever part of it.
If I was ever part of it to begin with. And so now you're telling me that I have to like I never did it to begin with. I left the house at 18 years old and got into this gun club. And so this is all I know as an adult. This is it. And I thought that was pretty profound because that's a very factual statement.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's pretty much dead on right there. Like, never really had an adult type job. You know, I was in college and tending bar and out, you know, screwing off and being an idiot. Yeah, now that you think about it, I've never had that adult big boy job until recently, you know?
Where like your decisions are, I mean, our decisions in our previous lives, like they definitely affected.
Oh yeah,
you know, that's definitely affected people. But like the profession that you're in now is like, there's the second and third order effects of bad decisions are pretty significant.
Yeah, you know, I feel very blessed and fortunate to end up with the current job I'm in the defense industry. But and a little bit of imposter syndrome every day. Just waiting for somebody to, like, you know, knock on my little cubicle there and be like, hey, this was an accident. Like, we didn't realize. But no, it's been great. I've been super, super fortunate. And, you know, I get to, I can't believe I'm doing this on camera, but I have to give Keely credit because she's, you know, when I was going through the kind of the pits of everything and anxiety was through the roof and, you know, how do I, you know, maintain our current lifestyle or improve on it? And, you know, what are we going to do? And she's like, she told me, she's like, hey, look, everything that's made you successful in the military is going to make you successful on the outside. Like you're underestimating your value. You're underestimating your value. Like, you know, when we start applying for jobs, let's swing for the fences. And I just didn't believe it. I don't know why. And then, you know, I did kind of swing for the fences and got really lucky. But it's just interesting how hard it is to step outside your comfort level. Like, you know, I come from an organization that prides itself on, you know, solving problems and unknown challenges and tackling, you know, the nation's most difficult problems and missions and everything else. But when it came to like me personally, stepping outside that comfort level and doing something new, like that was very hard, very hard.
When you were experiencing that, what did you recognize it immediately, or did it take you some time?
No, I did not recognize it immediately. Like, you know, you feel off. You're maybe a little crankier, maybe you're not sleeping as good. I don't think I recognized it immediately. Maybe you're arguing with your spouse a little more than whatever, and you know, you chalk it up to like, you know, it's just this or it's just that, and it's really, really hard to look inside and be like, okay, this is me causing this.
Yeah.
And you know, again, like I said earlier, it's not just you that it affects everybody around you. And if you don't have that strong support network, and I think most importantly, somebody who's confident enough and strong enough to call you on your bullshit and to calmly and rationally tell you, like, hey, you're not okay. Mm-hmm. Like, I know you think you're okay. I'm not saying you're a weak individual. I'm not saying you can't handle this. I'm just telling you, this is not normal. You're not okay.
Right.
And that's what it took for me to start reaching out to people, mentors, you know, talk to the unit psychologist, you know, talk to these people to get some semblance of help.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful I had those resources. I know not everybody's so lucky. And I am grateful that the military, you know, for my last year in the military, it was pretty much focused on this process of getting out. And I know that, like, I'm sure you didn't have that luxury. It was like from when, so you got blown up, you healed, the med board was shortly thereafter, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to say I was healed. Like, I was still, you know, going through rehab. I was still going to physical therapy all the time. Later, I would have more surgeries to continue to repair things. A decade later, I would have another surgery that I paid for out of my own pocket because the VA was so absolutely horrible to deal with and broken. That was before community care was a thing.
Right.
And it was just like, I can't handle this. Like, this is bad.
So from your med board to out, how long was that process?
Okay, so I was wounded in combat on November 9th of 2004, and I went on terminal leave September 13th of 2005, so less than a year.
Wow. And a lot of that time was just physically healing.
Yeah, probably about a good 6 months of that was physically healing, and I was a newly promoted staff sergeant, so in the Marine Corps, that basically means as an 0369, you're an infantry unit leader, and you just basically go needs in the Marine Corps, right? And so they were going to put me in charge of the regimental, we used to call it slang, the regimental platoon. It was all the admin guys that was getting ready to get admin sept,
right?
You know, the drug pops and the dudes that were getting into fights all the time, and like everybody that was. And that was just, I was just like, you have to be kidding me. I went from leading a sniper team to in combat to this, like absolutely not. And luckily I had some friends that were working at the urban sniper course at First Special Operations Training Group at the MEF. And they were like, no fucking way, dude. Like, we got you. And so I got orders from the MEF, and they pulled some strings, and thank God I was able to do my Twilight tour with gunfighters. And I was at the schoolhouse at First SOTG and made some amazing friends there in the short time that I was there. And it definitely saved my sanity. Like, I don't know what would have happened if I had to literally go crutch my ass into regiment every day to deal with all that crazy shit.
Yeah, and at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, you were still thinking that you're going to be a Marine. Like, but,
yeah. No.
So your process, though, what I was trying to get at from holy shit, I need to do something different, to driving off the base.
Oh yeah,
that window flash to bang was very short.
Real fast.
Yeah. So my hat's off to you, because I had a year.
Yeah, man.
And it was not cool.
I left. I remember I left base. I left Camp Pendleton. We checked out a base housing, packed up stuff we did a ditty move, right? And dude, I think from the front gate of Camp Pendleton, like, I didn't stop crying until like fucking San Francisco.
Yeah.
On the way up north to Washington. It was a really brutal time, because it was just like, I was terrified, absolutely terrified.
What was it like for you driving off?
So I was supposed to retire out of the Marine Corps, and I say that because I was a lifer. I was a really good Marine. Every course that I went to, try to get honor grad. If I didn't get honor grad, I just fell short with just one. High shooter at cyber schools, and the top fit reps and stuff like that, and so I think when I made the decision to get out of the Marine Corps, I honestly didn't have a plan, and it was I always make the assimilation with Kaylin and I as like Dr. Dre and Eminem.
This is I've never heard this before. Why am I just not hearing about this?
I'm gonna have to ask, like, who is who in this equation?
So when I got out of the Marine Corps in April of 2018, I didn't take any terminal, but I had already had my sights set on this plan, right? Because Kaylin had called me a week prior to, or like 2 weeks. It was like 2 weeks prior to me getting out. I was on the way to a stock lane. I just typed the story up. It's funny. I was on the way to stock lane because the training's still happening. There's a sniper school still going on. Staff needs walkers, right? I'm like, okay, I'm on the way. So I'm driving through Camp Pendleton, and they get a phone call that I hadn't seen Kaylin since I bumped into him in between the Night Force booth and the Vortex booth, the SHOT Show. Just stopped to see him. Like, Kaylin. Phil Vallejo, I'm an instructor at the schoolhouse, and Joseph had put us in contact. So we had talked, and then Kaylin called me 3 months later in March. He's like, hey man, you still get out of the Marine Corps? And like in my head at that point in time, I was dead set on getting out of the Marine Corps and going back to live with my mom and use a GI Bill like every veteran does.
Yeah.
Right. But that was that was like my idea eventually becoming a reality, you know? And so he called me and I was like, he's like, hey man, so you got the Marine Corps? I was like, yeah, I am. He's like, you want to move to Cody, Wyoming? I was like, where the fuck is Cody, Wyoming? And he offered me the job at Gunworks, right? And as soon as I got out, that following weekend, I had my job interview at the same time that I'd already scheduled the 2-day NRL match when NRL was still on, that Scott put on. And then, you know, I like the facility, and honestly, if I'm being 100% honest with you, I knew that I took that job mainly because I had no other plan, and I was refusing to fail in the eyes of everybody that knew I shouldn't have gotten out of the Marine Corps.
No, that's a good point, because I had a little bit of that too, right?
Yeah,
I think
sure.
that it's different when you're over 20 and there's always that risk, but yeah, there's some real fear of like having to look somebody in the face and be like, man, I messed up. I shouldn't have left.
Because I was like, I have no business staying in Cody, Wyoming. Like, I grew up with such a big family. You know, my mom was living in Las Vegas. My daughter was at this point in a very toxic environment between like Las Vegas and Texas. So I didn't have a real clear plan, honestly, of like how I'd now be able to spend time with her, because that was a big reason why I got out initially, right? My kicking and screaming was I was due for orders, and they were like, hey, Staff Sergeant Vallejo, you're gonna go to the East Coast and pick up some, you know, whatever platoon, right? As Kalen said, is when you become an 0369, you're no longer a scout sniper. You are a infantry unit leader, and that's what they see you as. And I was like, I didn't spend 11 years in the Marine Corps as a scout sniper to go lead mortarmen, right? I know it would be good for my career, but, you know, at the point of the time and value and money of it, or the sacrifices I made for my community, you know, I was like, I'd rather just give it back to my daughter some ways, shape, form.
I think, you know, looking back on it, you know, even back to when I was enlisted too, like how many times it's like, oh, I can't wait to get out. I can't wait to do this, or I can't wait, F this, F that. This is dumb. Like, dude, I can't wait to get out, grow my hair out, and blah, blah, blah. And then when it happens and that door closes behind you, that's a moment.
Yeah.
It's a moment for sure.
I never had any of that. Like I was the dude who was just like, I'm here to stay. Yeah. Like I'm here. And so I had aspirations actually to go to the Army side.
Yeah.
That was my ultimate career goal. Once I learned more about what that was, I spent just shy of 2 weeks working with an ODA on my Iraq trip. And once I saw how those guys operated and what they did, they played by different rules. They did their own thing. Yep. And not only that, they were consummate professionals. Like night and day from anything else that I had ever witnessed in the military. Yep. And then I learned about, you know, from that perspective, then I learned about the unit. Yep. And I was like, okay, well, you know, this is what I've heard about. And now that I had a chance to witness it, that's where I'm going. And so I had aspirations to go to the Force Reconnaissance route. And I had cut a deal with Sergeant Major that he wanted me to come to that battalion that I would go to Iraq with. And he was just like, well, I want you to come take this platoon. It's a junior platoon. And I said, well, I'm not so fast, Sergeant Major. I'm not going to get promoted to E6, Staff Sergeant, become an 0369, and then allow the monitor to have his will with me. That's not happening. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If you come over here, you give me one deployment, I will let you go take the force in dock. And I said, as long as you give me your word. And he goes, I'll make it even better. We'll get on the phone with the monitor and we'll talk to him. I was like, okay, sounds good. Roger that. And my eventual path was, or what I wanted to do was I wanted to go I didn't want to be in a leadership role anymore. I wanted to focus on being as best of a dude as I could.
Right.
And then chase after the next step. And ultimately, I wanted to end up at the unit. And so, you know, things just didn't work out that way.
No, that's laid plans of mice and men.
You know, I think it's interesting that you say that, because I was, you know, going back to that when I was asking you, like, how did you realize things? And I don't think I started to realize all of that shit that I had locked away or attempted to lock away until very recently in my life. Very, very recently. And so, and like you said, you know, having Keely with you, Keely's wonderful, man. I mean, known her for a long time. Well, I've known her as long as I've known you. And you know, she's wonderful, wonderful support. Like, always had good head on her shoulders.
Sure.
And I have a woman in my life that's that way. And she has really focused on healing herself through her own issues and her own traumas that she's been exposed to in her life. And I don't think that I would have been exposed to that aspect of the healing part of life had I not met her.
Sure.
And so through meeting her, she exposed me to all of those things. Like, I was always under the impression that, you know, PTSD was just like, you were crazy, right? Your erratic behavior, you know.
The Hollywood version.
Yeah, the Hollywood version.
exactly.
But the reality of PTS, now that I understand what it is, it's, you know, from a physiological standpoint and a psychological standpoint, it does not deserve the stigma that is placed on it. It's really just your nervous system is out of whack, and you have to get your nervous system back to a lower level of homeostasis and baseline, because our level of homeostasis is extremely elevated, right? Extremely elevated, and there's very little that you can do to prevent it from getting sent over the top, right? There's very little that you can do. And you don't understand that until you're placed into this, like, that anxiety that you feel, or that stress and the worry, and you're getting put over the edge, right? Just by doing that. And then your behavior changes and your patterns start to change. And, you know, it's, you know, whether it's, you know, some dudes chase after it with booze, some dudes chase after it with drugs, some dudes chase after it with women, you know, midlife crisis, and just overall bad behavior.
Just filling the hole.
Yep. Filling the hole, trying to keep that shit locked away.
Yep.
You know, and once you're in a strong support network where people aren't poking at you and picking at you and making you feel worse, knowing that they're there because they love you and they want to help you.
Right.
And it's not like, it's all about the delivery, and it's all about the strength of that relationship and how much you care about that person, and then how they show you and how they illustrate to you, like, hey, these are your patterns, these are your behaviors, these are the things that you do, and calling you on your shit, right? And you have to be ready. Like like we were talking today, you can lead a horse to water.
Yeah.
You can't make that bastard drink, right? So, and we're the same way. We have to see it for ourselves. You're not going to wake up to this stuff because somebody tells you to. You have to wake up to it by experiencing it for yourself and going, oh man, that's me. I'm totally doing that.
Yep.
Absolutely doing that. And then it's okay. And then having, like, people say that, and having people around you that say that it's okay. Like, you're not broken.
Right.
This is totally fixable. You just have to be exposed to the right people and the right things.
So I'm curious, because I struggle with this, right? Like, when somebody says, like, you're okay, if I'm consoling a friend, you guys or whatever, and you guys, I'm not saying it's you, but when I get that reaffirmation, it's like, hey, it's not you. In my head, I feel like it still is me. if that makes sense, like meaning that like that is still not enough with regard to like my self-worth or image, right? Like, and that's why I appreciate you talking about Keely, because like I recently, my new girlfriend now, like how much she has supported me in my own individual self-growth and journey, especially as a father, you know what I mean? And what she's done to like help me understand kind of like my value, right? Because like behind closed doors, like I said, there's a lot of regret with my relationship with Zoe, like not showing up when she needed me, right? Because of all the things in Zoe's childhood is starting to like rear its ugly head, if that makes sense, right? And so I look at that immediately as a reflection of my abandonment, I guess I would say, and so it's hard because of the nature of the job that we were in to even when I was in the Marine Corps to tell, one of my best friends, I see every day at work, like this is what's happening at home, because I didn't want to be that guy.
No.
Yeah, nobody does.
Nobody does.
Right.
Right, because you're supposed to keep that shit over there.
Exactly.
And you keep that out of this door.
But
you keep that out of this room.
But when I do, when I am opening up, right, if I do open up and they're like, oh man, you're good, right? Are they just saying that?
Right.
In my head, like that's what's going on in my head is like, is he just saying that so that like he can just like move on to the next conversation? Or like, is actually coming from a place of...
I think that this is where it really, really pays if you have access to a trained professional.
Yeah, sure.
Because a trained professional can word things a little better. So I had similar thoughts to what you're saying. Like, she's my spouse. She's supposed to tell me I'm going to be all right. That's
right.
her supporting her man, whatever. But I had a therapist who said, you have to understand that these behaviors that you're worried about, like who you are, who you're going to be and all this, is an outlying symptom of a sickness that's going to pass, that we're going to treat, it's going to pass, right? Like, much like I have a cough right now, I'm not a sick person as a whole. I went through some illness recently. This is kind of a vestige of that. And once it goes, then I'll resume my normal life again. And I think that you can't internalize these feelings like, okay, this is who I am now. I'm not a indecisive. I'm not an anxious person. I'm not a grouchy, like, chew everybody out for no reason kind of person. Mm-hmm. These are just outward behaviors that are manifesting because I am going through this season in my life right now.
Right.
And like I said, I'm really thankful that I got to talk to a therapist about this just a few times, but it made a big, big difference, I think, because I mean, your spouse may have their best intention too, but there's a little bit of a barrier there too, right? Like, you're supposed to tell me these things.
Sure.
It's different when it comes from an objective person on the outside.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, I'm not used to hearing those things. To be completely honest with you, I was in two very emotionally abusive relationships that I didn't recognize until I separated from both of them. One of them being Zoe's mom, and then my ex-wife.
Yeah, I know we're having a serious conversation, but like, you guys have been craving those abusive relationships your entire career. With your route as a scout sniper, from the stories I've heard about life as a pig. But
well, there is something to be said about, all jokes aside, like that actually, you will seek that out unconsciously, right? And that's another cool thing that Cassandra has helped me see is she is fascinated and studies depth psychology, Jungian psychology, the ego, the persona, and the shadow, understanding those three aspects and how to individuate, become an individual.
that was a really big word.
Yeah, right. It's a big word, but then you start looking at it and you go, okay, well, being okay with those parts is part of being whole, right? Because all of the things that we don't like about ourselves go into the darkness, right? They go into what Jung calls the shadow. And so then what we see, we were talking about this the other night, like what what we reject within ourselves, we will project onto other people. We'll seek out things that bother us, right? Like, and the things that bother us about somebody else, we're seeing those traits because we're unhappy with those traits inside of us.
Sure.
And so going through these transitions in life or going through something difficult just freaking amplifies that through the roof, right? So like the conversation that you and I were having in the car, I forget what trip I was on or where I was going, but we had this brief conversation about, you know, about the genesis of this discussion that we're having right now. And you were just like, there's just things that piss me the fuck off, right? And I was just really like, I don't
even know why I'm mad.
I don't even know why I'm mad right now.
I'm just really mad.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm just really mad. And that's also part of the shit in our shadows that is poking at us and saying, hey, you need to address this.
Yeah, I remember that conversation now. It's actually a decent story. I was driving, and I wasn't paying attention. I was distracted. I can't remember what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
And the lane that I was in kind of ended, and so I gassed it and I kind of cut a guy off a little bit, and you know, he honked his horn, whatever. I stuck my hand out the window, like, my bad, dude, you know, whatever. And I pulled into a restaurant, and he pulled in and boxed me in.
Some road rage.
And instantly, like, all my alerts are up. Like, this dude is obviously coming here for a confrontation. I immediately go to like violence, like we're about to be in, you know, a fight or something like that, because that's just my initial reaction until I can assess the situation and, okay, you know, whatever. And this dude starts screaming at me, and I said, hey, man, I'm really sorry. Like, I was wrong, you know, my bad. And he kept going. And he, you know, calling me all the worst things, and I ought to kick your ass and all that. It did not help that, you know, I've always said that, you know, I'm horribly prejudiced against, you know, overweight people. Like, it's a character flaw of mine that I look at overweight people and I tend to make snap judgments about them. And this person was about the most unhealthy person I could have possibly imagined for you. Like, whatever cartoon caricature that you can draw up in your head of the most unhealthy person in America, this person was telling me they were going to get out and kick my ass, and I don't think that they could have gotten out of the car. And that made my anger just through the roof. One, I come from a culture that if you fuck up and you own it,
We're cool.
we're cool. Like,
Right.
just own it. I owned it. I apologized to this dude, and he kept going. And I had all kinds of horrible thoughts run through my head. Like, I was ready to yank this dude out of the car and just beat him. And I don't know what happened or how, I can't even remember like how the confrontation ended. I know I advanced on him, and then he drove off. Thank God, right? Because I don't know how that altercation could have went, right? And so I'm back in the car, and I'm furious, and I'm fucking pissed. And then I was like, why am I pissed? Like, I've been around the block. I know that dude wasn't about me. Like, that wasn't just me cutting him off. Like, you don't get that mad with just somebody cutting you off. Like, I know that. I'm ordinarily self-aware enough to just not let that go, or to not let that get to me. But man, I was nuclear, and I couldn't understand. Like, I knew I was in the wrong, and I knew I shouldn't be this angry, but I was this angry, and I was completely like powerless. And so I sat there for probably 15 or 20 minutes thinking on it. And then, you know, I started driving home, and that's when I called you.
Oh, that was right after that.
Yeah, it was like right after.
Oh, I thought it was like a, you know, a previous.
No, and
Whoa, okay.
because I mean, there's certain people that can relate to your experiences, right? And you know, we've had a lot of conversations about, you know, stuff like this. And when I called you, and I was like, man, I am angry, and I don't fucking know why. And I guarantee if Keely had been sitting next to you, she would have been like, I know why. You know what I mean? But at the time, I could not get out of it. And that goes back to that, you know, when you're trying not to drown, you can't really make any progress and swim to shore.
That's true.
And that was, again, one of those moments where it was like, okay, I'm not okay. Like, I need to do something about this before I do something stupid or affect something.
Well, yeah, it'll get pushed over the edge.
Yeah. So, like I said, I feel lucky and blessed that I managed to, you know, and it's still very much a work in progress, but I managed to get through those, you know, those danger months and emerge okay. And I think that, you know, I'm definitely on the upswing and life is pretty freaking fantastic right now. Yeah. But that journey to get there was rough. So,
yeah.
I wonder, and I think this is why I have so much love for the competition community. And I want to say that, like, I was almost groomed on my exit with the local community of shooters that kind of took me under their wing, because they were all fathers. They were all in their very successful mid-40s. Their kids were in their teenager years. I mean, they all made at least easily over 150 to 200 grand a year, right? And they were in the sport of precision rifle. And I was this young, ego-filled scout sniper instructor that was trying to bridge the gap between civilian long-range shooting and what the military was doing. And so every month, right, when I wasn't teaching snipers, I'd go out and hang out with those guys, go shoot with them. And then we'd go to these events, or like dinners and stuff like that. That's about 45 minutes from the house. They all lived in like Orange County, LA. But what they taught me was like what I truly valued about our relationship was that, like, they didn't, when it came time to settings like that, it was not about shooting. It was about things like family and like all the things that I was missing because of my service. And I think truly why I feel like I have to, you know, spread the message and the word of these competitions, your locals, because I feel that when people come to our class and they start getting at the local level, they eventually touch younger versions of me, right? That are like looking for, you know, mentorship, right? And I feel like that's why for me the exit wasn't so violent as compared to both of you guys, you know, because I mean, they truly just helped me form my mentality, like, hey, this is what my next journey is. It's like, I'm gonna go like my job now is to be a dad to my daughter, right? And like I thankfully, because of the support of obviously all of our listeners, everyone that supports Modern Day Sniper, like, I'm able to do that, and I'm truly grateful.
Yeah. There's no doubt that, you know, outside of the special operations community, this precision rifle shooting community, it's easily filled with the highest percentage of just great people that I've met. And like John Kyle Truitt and his family.
I talked about him last night on the podcast.
Yeah. Shout out to that guy. He's one of the best dudes on the planet. I don't know how he knew, reached out to me out of the blue. Hey man, I'm just checking on you. You've been on my mind lately. Sparked a conversation, and we talked probably twice a week for probably a solid 2 months or so, just helping me talk through things, you know. And the community is filled with people like that, honestly.
Good Americans.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So, absolutely. No, it's something that I learned from my wife, Cass, is that you're not obligated to be the same person you were yesterday. You're not even obligated to be the same person that you were 5 minutes ago. And everything is a constant evolution. Everything is a constant change. And there is a polarity in everything. There's a polar opposite, 180 degrees opposite of everything. And you're not like, I think that stigma of you're broken, you're a bad human being, or you've experienced some bouts of bad behavior that that manifested as a result of your inability to understand what was going on inside your brain and inside your body does not define you as a human being, right? And that's like, that's where that stigma comes from, right? That's where that becomes that's where it becomes a problem, is when people are like, oh, this is now me, right? And that's where that pit of despair starts to get deeper and deeper.
Yeah, the symptom isn't you.
Yeah, I've been there, man. I've been there very recently, to the point where, like, yeah, if it wasn't for that dude, I'd be in serious fucking trouble. Serious fucking trouble.
And again, it never got answered. Just for my clarification, he is Dre or he is Eminem?
It didn't get answered. You kind of skipped right over that. You blazed right over that one.
I'm definitely Eminem. Galen is Dr. Dre of Aftermath Studios. I just watched that movie. Actually, me and my girlfriend watched Straight Outta Compton the other day.
Oh.
Yeah. Great movie, by the way, if you haven't watched it.
I thought for sure I was going to be Eminem, but okay. Yeah, that'll work. No, I'm eternally grateful for all the people that I've met in this journey. Eternally.
And that's the power of real friends, right? And I think, if I could convey to anybody listening, like, how can I help? How would reach out to people? That dude you haven't heard from in a while? Like, wonder what's going on with him? Hey man, what's going on?
Yep.
Just reach out. You'd be surprised at how many doors that opened up. It meant the world to me when John Kyle called to me, and just wanted to chat. Hey, how you doing? What can I help with?
Well, even when, honestly, Michael, when you and I first met after Rock Lake, we were just talking about this, like how you and Keely opened your door to me, especially relating to me as a single father, right? Because I was going through that very weird time with my ex, right? That that you met, right? And I had just gotten Zoe full time, and there was that balance of just like me trying to figure out how do I structure time with her, and because at this point, like, my career, I was still trying to figure out my career, I think, right? Of like, do I want to stay with Gunworks? Is it time to make the transition to modern day sniper? And I'll be honest, like, even though I had Zoe full time, I was not present, right? Because like I'd pick her up from school and I'd be like focusing on what's next to do, and like that was my busy time, right? And then I obviously realized that, like, hey, like, I'm here but I'm not here, right? And we had this discussion over the phone one evening about the schedule that you had with your boys growing up, right? Like, hey, as soon as we get done with dinner, I have an hour, we do homework, and then we have whatever they want to do. And I remember establishing that because of you for about a year, and it really truly changed my relationship with Zoe. So I appreciate that about you.
I appreciate it, and thanks. Yeah, I think that I don't know how I survived that time frame, and I'm sure you've heard this story, but I was in flight school in the Army, which is a pretty stressful time. It's pretty hard. Not hard in the getting yelled at or dragging through the mud. It's mentally just exhausting. You have to absorb a large amount of knowledge very quickly, and everything you do is evaluated. And my first wife left at that point, and I had the kids in flight school, so I would wake up every morning at 3:30, wake up the boys, and I would take them to my neighbor's house, the Grandies. Thank God for them. They saved me during that time frame. And they would go back to bed. I would go to Flightline, fly, go to academics. They would wake up. The oldest would go to school. He was in kindergarten at the time. The youngest, stayed there. I would get back right about the time they got off the bus. He got off the bus. We would do their homework, make dinner, get them cleaned up. And then every day I would block off 1 hour this is daddy time. Like whatever you want to do, like nothing matters but this. Daddy time, ready for bed, put him to bed at 8, and then I would stay up till midnight studying every night. And then, you know, I get like 4 hours of sleep and start all over. And then weekends, you know, it was just trying to catch up on some sleep and take care of the boys and stuff like that and get ready for the next week. Honestly, I don't know how I made it through that time, but I still have some of my most fond memories that occurred during that hour. And, you know, the boys have told stories that they remember. Well, Cameron Aiden was too young, of stuff that we did during that hour. So, you know, that time is very impactful to be present. Like, it's hard to explain how different it is between 1 hour of being present and 20 hours of just being distracted, just being
there. Be occupying space.
Right.
So my question to you, Michael, then, because that does sound stressful, right? Like in terms of that time of your life, right? And you said the hardest thing that you've ever had to do is get out of the military, right? And so do you think the difference at that point in time, because you had so many things to do between flight school, taking care of your boys, right? Like your mind was occupied 24 hours a day. And then now as you're preparing to exit, there's nothing to do.
No, I think that's a lot of it. I had the time and space and opportunity to just, in the absence of filling it up with these things, that just left room for all the worry and anxiety. And there's, you know, and I've never been an operator, but I know a little bit about their selection process, and it's very different than a lot of what people, civilians especially, picture an assessment like. You know, they've seen the SEAL movies and people yelling at somebody, do you want to quit? You know, you're never going to make it, stuff like that. Well, it's actually fairly easy to keep going when somebody's telling you you're not going to make it. Yeah. Because it motivates you, right? Like, you're not going to break me. Yeah.
It's the silence and the non-emotion.
Their assessment is you by yourself with some misery and a crap ton of time with no input or feedback. So all those thoughts can just creep on in. And, you know, I don't want to speak too long on that subject because I'm not an expert on it. I just know that I can appreciate why things are set the way they are, because now you're getting a true assessment of somebody.
Dude, the hardest thing honestly, man, like the hardest thing that I've ever done was be alone in the mountains for 10 days by myself, and not like in inclement weather, not seeing animals, going through a divorce, like just spinning, right? And breaking down, fucking crying on the side of a mountain because you don't know what's going to happen in your life. And like, those are absolutely challenging times.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I do think you're right. Like, I didn't have an option. Like, this had to work. Yeah. I had to pull this off. We're talking about my children. This is no fail. Like, I didn't have time for any of that to get in there. And then, you know, you're living minute to minute, meal to meal, and then at some point
there's no time for you to there's no time for you to actually sit and go, what is actually happening right now?
Yeah. And then then I graduated and moved on, and, you know, it was the next phase, the next chapter. But no, I would agree, like, looking back on it, yes, that was super hard, one of the most difficult times of my life. I would say I was more affected emotionally by this easily.
Yeah. And definitely, I think because it is tied to emotion, right? That is why it is so draining, right? And I'm guilty of being a recluse, meaning that, like,
it's
hard to get hold of me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you referring to not answering phone calls?
Typically,
if Phil's not answering your calls, you're not alone.
Yeah. Everything is okay.
You're not alone. I would say a good indication of me not answering my phone is me, if I'm being completely transparent with both of you, is me dealing with the shit that is going on in my head. That I am too, like, I'm sitting here talking to you guys about it right now. but that I struggle with, because we've talked about this with my dad, right? What he put in my head.
Yep.
Of like, only Philip is going to take care of Philip, right? That like, that has been a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I know that I've pushed relationships away, like some of my close friends in the Marine Corps, because like I've never been as open as they are with some of their struggles and stuff like that. Because you know, Claire and I were having this conversation the other day. If like something were to happen, like she's like, I don't know who to call other than Kaylin, you know. I know 3 of her best friends that I could call if something were happening to her, and she's like, other than Kaylin and your family, I don't know who else to call. Because I definitely, when stuff starts happening in the background, whether it be family, whether it be my own shit, like I just shut down and don't want to. I don't want to talk to anybody.
I'm guilty of the same thing. Cassandra said the same thing. She's like, I mean, she knows she can reach out to you, obviously. She's reached out to Mick, and I am guilty of the same thing, right? Just go inside, go deep, and just shut off, right? And so, yeah, it's a pitfall, and I would like to be able to say I think I think so. Like I'm on the other side, because I think a lot of the issues that I should have dealt with my separation all came to a head on top of all of that familial crazy shit that I went through in these last 4 years, and it just exacerbated it. It just made it worse. And so I'm super grateful to have, you know, like you said, good therapists, people that you can talk to, supportive families, brothers that will fucking help you. Like you're not alone. You are absolutely not alone. And you just have to reach out. And I'm guilty of not doing it. And you're like, I don't want to come across as sound like a hypocrite, but I'm guilty of doing it myself.
Yeah, I mean, humans being humans, though, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I know I shouldn't eat that cookie, but
I had 3.
Keelys are good.
probably gonna eat that cookie. You know, like, it's just interesting. You know, we've had a lot of great conversations with this tonight, and I'm a little bit on another side too, because I'm out, and now my children are in, and you know, they always ask. They're pretty great about asking for advice. I don't know if it's just to appease the old man or whatever, but like, hey, I'm running into this. What do you think? What do you think? And I think one of the things that I impart to them is like, your time in the military, however long it may be, or however short it may be, is someday going to end. And you do need to be aware of that. One, so you appreciate what's going on right now.
For sure.
And I say, you know, I wish I'd have taken more pictures with the boys, you know, my time in. But especially in my community, it's like pictures are kind of frowned on or whatever. But I wish I'd taken more time and more pictures with the boys. And I think looking back on it, I wish I'd have cherished it just a little more. But I was always just so mission focused.
Absolutely.
That what's the next evolution? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And then you move down the road and you look back and it's, you know, this.
Yep.
That's it.
It's one thing my grandfather did tell me. My grandpa Wojcik, who he fought in World War II at the 82nd Airborne, he said, when you take pictures, he goes, write people's names on the back of the pictures.
That's really great advice too.
He said, I'm blessed to have a bunch of pictures, but he goes, damned if I can remember anybody's name.
Or just tag them.
Oh yeah. Now we have that. Yeah, we use
Put your hashtags right.
What would you tell your, I know this is pretty cliche, but like, I'm genuine when I ask, what would you tell your younger self, right? Because we talk about like, how many lives have you lived since you've got out? And I would ask you that all the time, right? Because I feel like when we were really starting to like connect and get to know each other through conversations on the phone and stuff like that, like I felt like from the time that you had left the cyber community till, you know, we started Modern Day Sniper, you had lived so many lives.
Many.
Right. So what would you tell Michael Lilly that is just about to join the Army after 9/11?
Wow. What would I tell that kid? Man, I just had this conversation the other day, like in a slightly different flavor, that if I ran into, that me before he was joining the military, I probably really wouldn't like that kid.
No kidding, man.
Right? I would say you're going to meet the best people you've ever met in your life. You're going to experience the highest of highs. You're going to experience the lowest of lows. People are the most important thing. Relationships are the most important thing. Everything else is all built around relationships. Every mission that gets done built around relationships. Like, it's hard to articulate, and I'll probably fail, but like the example I'll use is, how many times is like, oh, I got a friend who can do this and he can help us, and then whatever, and you get through it. Appreciate it while it's going on. Like, take a moment every now and then and realize like how awesome this is. For me, that moment was always like every mission, especially at the end when I was like a flight lead, and when we're all loaded up with the baddest dudes on the planet about to go lay like absolute hate on some asshole's doorstep, and we're all waiting on the word to go and to be unleashed, and the moment the Armada takes off and the thunder of all those birds leaving just full of the baddest dudes on the planet was the coolest feeling I've ever had in my life. Nothing will ever top it. Like, as far as like satisfaction of like, this is awesome. Just appreciate it, because I think looking back on it, I thought it was never going to end, and then it did. Even though it was my choice, even though I decided to get out, looking back, it seems like it happened really fast, But
When's the next time you come back to the podcast?
no, it's been. If this is the interval, it's going to be a little while. I don't know. We'll see where it takes us. I'm just really looking forward to day 2 of the class tomorrow, to be honest. I was super excited about day 3 until I saw the weather forecast.
It's gonna be a little gnarly.
Yeah.
My favorite moment of this morning was us heading out to the 100, and you just came back in your truck, and you're like, I'm going to go put on another warming layer.
Yeah, because it's cold and I can. Yeah.
Yeah. You can only be hard for so long.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Definitely have a more conscientious of the cost-benefit analysis of these decisions to man up. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right on. Well, Mike, this was a lot of fun. I think this was very needed. This was a very necessary conversation, and I appreciate you letting me know.
Thanks, man. I'm really grateful that we can have this conversation, and if one person hears it and feels like they're not alone, and they're wondering why they're struggling, and to understand that it's normal, it's something that we all go through in some way, shape, or form when we get out, like, totally worth an hour or 2 of our time to sit here and chat about it. So
looking forward to hearing about your continuous journey and your new chapter and career path.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to my continuing journey as a rifleman. I'm excited about that possibility in 2024. Now that I feel like I'm in a good place mentally, and I have the bandwidth to appreciate it a little more. So,
if you guys are not familiar, Michael, you have awesome channels. YouTube, very informative, very different flavor from what the typical is, because you guys, I think you and Keely do the best at breaking the barrier to entry down with regard to, all the tactical stuff that you see and whatever you see on Instagram and YouTube nowadays, right?
Yeah, so, for those of your listeners that don't know, we have a YouTube channel. It's called Long Range with the Lillys, and it was basically Keely and I going to matches, and we would get like some little nugget. We'll talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, and we get this little nugget, and it would be like, man, if we'd have known about that before, it would have saved us this much money or these many points or whatever. And we just started kind of like documenting these lessons as we learned them, kind of sharing our journey. We've never taken the approach that like we're subject matter experts and you should be like us. It's mostly just sharing what we've learned along the way. And it's really cool how it's taken off, and it's really cool just, you know, to get the interaction and people thanking us and, hey, you know, your video with Scott Satterley taught me how to reload and, you know, whatever. I think actually the ones we get talked to about kind of the most, we haven't done one in a while, but is our disaster stage videos, where we, you know, we would film ourselves having just a complete train wreck of a stage. And a lot of people don't like showing their butt up, you know? And I feel like we get a lot of, man, I can relate to that so hard. So I'm sure that there's another opportunity for that at some point. I'm trying to avoid them now, but we'll see. But no, I appreciate the shout out.
Badass, man. Well, thank you, Mike. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Let's not make it another 4 years or whatever.
Well, guys, thank you for listening to the Modern Day Sniper podcast. And as you guys know, hit us up at moderndayRifleman.com. That's where we have a lot of really solid information and a really good crew of people that are all about sharing information and helping each other on their own individual journeys. And we hope to see you guys in the network.
Until then, keep your face on the gun.